My own daughter looked me in the eye and said, "Mom, please don't come. People already think you passed away, and it's better that way." I felt my knees weaken as she shut the door in my face. The heavy wooden door clicked shut, and the sound echoed in my chest like a gunshot. I stood there for a moment, staring at the brass knocker, a cold wind biting through my thin cardigan. My breath hitched in my throat, unable to decide if I should scream or collapse right there on the welcome mat I had bought her for her housewarming just 6 months ago. Before we continue this painful journey, please like and subscribe. Every click helps share the voices of elderly folks who've suffered in silence. It costs nothing, but it means the world to grandmas like me. Please stay till the end to see how I survived what came next, because I promise you, the darkness didn't win. I stood alone on her porch, my cane digging into the concrete, wondering when I became an embarrassment. I looked down at my orthopedic shoes, sensible and sturdy, and wondered if they were the problem. Was it my gray hair? The way my hands shook when I drank tea? The silence of the suburban street felt heavy, pressing down on my shoulders. I turned slowly, my hip joints protesting the movement, and began the long walk back to my car. I had never felt so small in my entire life. I drove back to my small Ohio apartment, my hands trembling so violently on the wheel that I had to pull over twice just to catch my breath. The road blurred through my tears, turning the streetlights into smeared stars. My daughter, Nora, hadn't always been this cold. I remembered the little girl who used to cling to my leg when strangers came to the house, the one who would crawl into my bed during thunderstorms and whisper that I was her whole world. Where had she gone? Now, she planned her wedding as if I were a ghost haunting her happiness. I thought about the way her eyes had looked when she closed that door, flat, unfeeling, devoid of any of the warmth I had poured into her for 30 years. It wasn't just anger, it was indifference, which hurts so much worse. Anger implies passion. Indifference implies I was already gone. I parked my old sedan in my designated spot and struggled to get out, my body feeling twice its age. My apartment was quiet, filled with the smell of lavender and old paper. Photos of Nora lined the hallway, her graduation, her first dance recital, her smiling face missing a front tooth. I touched the glass of a frame where we were baking cookies, leaving a fingerprint on the dust. I feared this rejection was only the beginning of a long, lonely winter in my life. A week earlier, I had asked her what I should wear, hoping to feel included in the process. I had called her on a Tuesday afternoon, clutching a catalog of dresses suitable for the mother of the bride. I had circled 3 options, a navy blue one, a soft silver one, and a dusty rose one that I thought brought out the color in my cheeks. "Nora, honey," I had said, trying to keep my voice light. "I was thinking about the silver dress for the ceremony. What do you think?" She sighed loudly into the receiver, a sound of pure exasperation, like I was a telemarketer bothering her during dinner. "Mom, honestly, I can't think about that right now. I have a million things to do. I'll figure it out later." She hung up before I could say another word. That sentence stung more than she knew. "I'll figure it out later" sounded an awful lot like "you don't matter." I sat in my armchair, the catalog sliding off my lap onto the floor. I didn't pick it up. I sensed a wall growing between us, brick by brick, built with silence and dismissal. I looked at the silver dress in the picture again. It looked elegant, dignified. I realized with a sinking feeling that dignity was exactly what was being stripped away from me, slowly, methodically, by the person I loved most. Her fiancé, Trent, barely spoke to me these days, always avoiding eye contact whenever I visited. He was a tall, ambitious man who worked in finance, always checking his watch as if time spent with me was currency he was losing. Last month, when I tried to help with the table decorations, folding napkins into the swans I had learned to make for my own sister's wedding decades ago, he whispered something to Nora. I was sitting at their dining table, my arthritic fingers working slowly but carefully. Trent leaned over to Nora in the kitchen doorway. I didn't catch every word, but I heard the tone. It was mocking. Nora giggled, a sharp, nervous sound. They both looked at me, then looked away quickly when I lifted my head. I pretended not to hear, continuing to fold the paper napkin, but it carved a deep bruise inside my chest. I wondered if I was being quietly pushed out of the picture. Was I too slow? Too old-fashioned? Did I smell like mothballs and peppermint? I sniffed my sleeve discreetly. I just smelled like soap. The isolation felt physical, a tightness in my throat that made it hard to swallow. It's a terrible thing to be in a room with family and feel completely invisible, like a piece of furniture that everyone wishes they could replace but hasn't gotten around to throwing out yet. Nora's younger brother, Caleb, checked on me sometimes, but even he seemed nervous now. Caleb had always been the softer one, the one who remembered my birthday without a reminder, the one who still called me Mama sometimes, even though he was 28. He stopped by my apartment on a rainy Thursday, shaking out his umbrella in the hallway, but he didn't sit down. He hovered by the door, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "How's the wedding planning going, sweetheart?" I asked, pouring him a cup of coffee he hadn't asked for, but I knew he liked. "It's stressful," he said, taking the cup but not drinking. He looked at the floor, then at the clock, anywhere but my eyes. "Nora is just really focused on the details. You know how she gets." But there was fear behind his eyes, not stress, fear. He looked like a boy who had broken a vase and was waiting for the punishment. He was hiding something. I could feel it in the air between us, thick and suffocating. I realized he knew more than he could say, and his loyalty was being torn in two. My heart tightened with dread. If Caleb, my sweet boy, couldn't look me in the eye, then whatever was happening was worse than just a daughter being busy. It was a betrayal in motion. 2 days later, I discovered they had a group chat for wedding plans. Everyone was in it except me. I only learned about it when Caleb accidentally showed me a message on his phone. We were sitting on my small patio, and he was showing me a picture of a potential cake. A notification popped up at the top of the screen. It was a message from Trent in a group titled The Big Day Team. The preview read, "Don't worry, we handled the grandma issue. She won't be a problem." My blood ran cold. The grandma issue? Not Mom, not Loretta, not even your mother. I was an issue, a problem to be handled. Seeing my name, my identity, turned into a logistical nuisance broke something in me. Caleb swiped the notification away instantly, his face flushing a deep crimson. "Mom, that's just Trent being stressed," he stammered, but the lie was weak. I felt like an intruder in my own family. I stared at the geraniums in my flower pots, red and cheerful, and felt a stark contrast to the gray desolation spreading inside me. They were plotting around me, discussing me like I was a leak in the roof or a stain on the carpet. I was the woman who taught Nora to read, who nursed her through chickenpox, and now I was just an issue. I tried calling Nora immediately after Caleb left, needing to hear her voice, needing to ask if I'd done something wrong to deserve this title. I sat by the rotary phone I still kept on the kitchen counter, my fingers shaking as I dialed the familiar number. It rang and rang and rang. Usually it would go to voicemail after 4 rings. This time it rang until the operator cut in. She had looked at the phone and let it ring. Or maybe she had blocked me. No, surely not. I dialed again. This time it went straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Nora. Leave a message." Her voice sounded so happy in the recording, so full of life. "Nora, honey, it's Mom," I said, my voice cracking. I just wanted to say hello. Please call me back." I hung up and stared at the silent device. The silence told me loud and clear, I wasn't wanted. My chest grew heavier each day, a physical weight pressing against my lungs. It felt like I was underwater, looking up at the surface where my family was breathing and laughing, while I slowly sank into the dark. I checked the phone every 10 minutes for the rest of the night, but it never rang back. When I finally got a brief text from her a day later about budget constraints, I tried to help. I offered to pay for her bouquet as a small gift. I texted back, "Honey, I know weddings are expensive. I have some money saved up. Let me pay for your flowers. I want to contribute." I had saved that money for months, skipping my Sunday roast beef and cutting back on the heating bill during the winter. It was $500 tucked away in an envelope in my sock drawer. Her response came within seconds. "I don't need your charity, Mom. Just stop." Charity? It was a gift from her mother. Her tone made me feel small, like I was a burden she couldn't shake. I looked at my worn hands, the skin thin like parchment paper. I had used these hands to braid her hair, to sew her prom dress, to hold her when she cried over her first breakup. Now, offering help was seen as an insult. I put the envelope of money back in the drawer, feeling foolish and old. I was trying to buy a ticket into a life that had already closed its doors to me. The rehearsal dinner was held at a nice restaurant downtown. I wasn't invited to the dinner itself, just told to meet up later if you want. I showed up early, hoping to catch a glimpse of them, maybe offer a congratulations. I stood near the entrance of the banquet hall, partially hidden by a large fern. I overheard Trent telling someone, a tall man in a suit, near the bar. "Yeah, it's a shame," Trent said. "Nora didn't have parents around anymore to help with the planning. It's been tough on her doing it all solo." My breath stopped. Didn't have parents around anymore? My husband, God rest his soul, had passed 10 years ago. But I was here. I was breathing. I was standing 10 feet away. My name wasn't just missing, it was erased. He spoke of me in the past tense, or rather, he spoke of a void where I should have been. I felt a wave of dizziness. Was I dead? Did I die and no one told me? I walked away before I cried in front of strangers. I hurried to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall, pressing my forehead against the cool metal door. It felt like being buried alive, screaming while dirt was shoveled into my casket with no one to hear me. 2 days before the wedding, I found out the truth from a neighbor, Mrs. Higgins. She stopped me by the mailboxes, looking uncomfortable. Mrs. Higgins was a kind woman, a gossip, yes, but not malicious. "Loretta," she said, touching my arm gently, "I got the invitation you sent over for Nora's wedding. It's beautiful cardstock." "Oh, I didn't send them," I said, confused. She frowned, pulling a cream-colored envelope from her purse. "Well, I thought it was strange, seeing how you're standing right here." She opened it and pointed to a line at the bottom. "In loving memory of the bride's parents, Thomas and Loretta." My hands shook so hard I dropped the envelope. It fluttered to the dirty linoleum floor like a dead bird. In loving memory? She listed me as late? I whispered, the blood draining from my face. Mrs. Higgins looked horrified. "I thought maybe it was a printing error, Loretta. I'm so sorry." I could barely breathe, knowing my daughter had declared me dead. The lobby spun around me. This wasn't just exclusion. This was a lie so big it erased my existence. I didn't understand why she hated me this much. On the morning of the wedding, I was still in a state of shock. I hadn't slept. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the coffee I hadn't touched. My phone buzzed. It was Nora. A short text. "Please don't show up. It's too complicated. Stay home." No explanation, no apology, no "I love you," just a command to disappear. I stared at the screen with tears sliding down my cheeks, dripping onto the Formica table. Too complicated. Something inside me broke open. It wasn't a loud break. It was the quiet snap of a branch that had been bending for too long. I had spent my life making myself smaller for others, trying not to be a bother, trying to be the good mother who sacrifices everything. But this was a sacrifice I couldn't make. She was asking me to participate in my own funeral while I was still alive. I deleted the text. I wouldn't reply. A cousin from out of state, Vern, called me an hour later. He sounded hesitant. "Loretta?" he asked when I picked up. "Yes, Vern, it's me." There was a long pause. "My God," he breathed. I'm at the hotel. Someone told me you were really gone, that you passed from a stroke a few months back. I was getting ready to go to the service and pay my respects to Nora." Hearing my own family confused about whether I was alive made me feel like a shadow. "I'm here, Vern," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm alive. But why would she—" He trailed off, the horror of the implication setting in. I realized this wasn't just exclusion, it was cruelty. Calculated, cold cruelty, and it was spreading. She had told everyone, friends, family, Trent's side. To everyone in that hall today, Loretta was a memory, a sad story to garner sympathy for the bride, not a living woman who wanted to dance at her daughter's wedding. That afternoon, as the clock ticked closer to the ceremony time, I wandered my apartment aimlessly. I opened a shoebox of old photos and found one of Nora hugging me at her middle school play. She was wearing a cardboard tree costume, grinning ear to ear, her arms thrown tight around my waist. I looked so young then, so tired but so happy. I held it for a long time, running my thumb over her smiling face, trying to understand where I had failed. Had I loved her too much? Not enough? Had I been too strict? Too lenient? The girl who once adored me had vanished. All that remained was someone ashamed of me. I looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror. I saw the wrinkles, the slight hunch in my posture. I was old, yes, but I wasn't a monster. I wasn't something to be hidden away. I was a mother, and mothers don't stop being mothers just because their children decide they are inconvenient. The grief of losing a child who is still alive is a specific kind of torture. It leaves you with nowhere to put your love. I called Caleb. He answered on the first ring, sounding breathless. "Mom, I can't talk long." "Why, Caleb?" I asked, my voice steady now. "Why did she do it?" He was silent for a moment, and then he let it out. She didn't want the guests seeing your cane, Mom. She said your slow walk would ruin the procession timing. She said you look frail. She said it made her look bad to have a sick mother. Those words crushed me more than anything else. Look bad. My frailty, my survival, my age. It was an aesthetic flaw to her. Like a wilted flower in a bouquet. I wasn't a person. I was a prop that didn't fit the scenery. I realized I had been hidden, not forgotten. She hadn't forgotten to invite me. She had actively curated me out of the event because I wasn't Instagram perfect. The vanity of it was nauseating. Caleb finally broke down and told me everything, the full extent of the lie. "She told them you had a stroke," he sobbed quietly into the phone. "She said it happened in March. She accepted donations for a stroke awareness charity in your name on the registry website. Mom, I tried to stop her, but Trent agreed with her. They said it was cleaner, simpler. My own daughter used my death to make her wedding look cleaner, neater, simpler. She monetized my fake death." I sat there stunned, feeling years older in a single moment. The betrayal went beyond emotional. It was moral. It was spiritual. She had sold my life for the sake of a seamless wedding timeline. "I'm sorry, Mom," Caleb whispered. "I'm so sorry." "It's not your fault, Caleb," I said softly. But I hung up the phone feeling like the world had tilted on its axis and I was sliding off the edge. That night, the night of the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I replayed my entire life as a mother. Birthdays where I baked cakes until 2 a.m. Scraped knees I bandaged with kisses. Late-night homework sessions where I relearned algebra just to help her pass. All the sacrifices. The vacations I didn't take so she could go to camp. The coats I didn't buy so she could have the trendy sneakers. Was all of it meaningless to her? Did she remember none of it? Or did she remember and simply not care? My heart felt bruised beyond repair. It wasn't a sharp pain anymore. It was a dull, aching throb that pulsed with every beat. I felt like a discarded wrapper, useful once to hold the precious contents, but now just trash to be swept away. I looked at my hands in the moonlight. They were the same hands that held her when she was born. How could she hate them so much? For the first time in my life, I felt truly unwanted. Not just by a stranger or a boss, but by the very flesh and blood I had created. I sat on the edge of my bed and cried until my voice disappeared, until there were no tears left, just dry, heaving sobs that shook my fragile frame. I wondered how a child I raised with love could rewrite me out of her story. Was I that terrible? I searched my memory for sins. I wasn't perfect. I had a temper sometimes. I worried too much. But I loved her. God, I loved her. I felt hollow and tired, a deep, bone-weary fatigue that sleep couldn't fix. I thought about just staying in bed. Maybe she was right. Maybe I should just fade away. It would be easier. The world clearly didn't need Loretta anymore. But as the wedding hour approached, 5 p.m., a calm washed over me. It started in my toes and worked its way up. It wasn't anger, not yet, but a strange clarity. Why was I hiding? I hadn't done anything wrong. I was the victim here, yet I was the one sitting in the dark feeling ashamed. I needed to stop shrinking. I had spent the last month shrinking, making myself smaller to fit into the tiny space she allowed me. But I was done shrinking. I was alive, I was breathing, and I was her mother. I stood up from the bed. My knees popped, but they held. I needed to stand up, at least for myself. If I didn't go, I would be accepting her lie. I would be agreeing that I was dead, and I wasn't ready to die yet. I put on my simple blue dress, the one I'd hoped she'd approve of weeks ago. It hung a little loose on me now. I had lost weight from the stress, but the color was vibrant. It matched my eyes. I put on my pearl necklace, the one my husband gave me for our 30th anniversary. I brushed my thinning hair, pinning it back neatly. I applied a little lipstick, a soft coral shade. I looked at my cane. It was scratched and old. I tied a small blue ribbon around the handle. I wasn't going to cause trouble. I wasn't going to scream or make a scene. I just needed to be seen. I needed to prove I existed. I deserved that much. I deserved to witness the day, even if the day didn't want me. I took a taxi to the venue. It was a fancy country club on the outskirts of town. The driver helped me out, looking concerned at my grim expression. "You okay, ma'am?" "I'm fine," I said, "just late for a very important date." I arrived quietly, slipping into the back of the venue just as the music started. The doors were open to the garden where the ceremony was taking place. Rows of white chairs were filled with people. I saw hats, flowers, smiling faces. I walked onto the grass. My cane sank slightly into the turf, making it harder to walk, but I pushed forward. People in the back row turned. Someone gasped. "Loretta?" a voice whispered. Then another. Isn't she supposed to be?" People whispered my name like I was a ghost returned. My legs trembled, but I kept walking down the side aisle. I wasn't doing this for her. I was doing it for me. Nora was at the altar. She looked beautiful in white, radiant. Trent was holding her hands. The officiant was speaking about truth and honesty in marriage. The irony was thick enough to choke on. Nora spotted me. She froze mid-sentence. Her eyes went wide, the whites showing all around. Her face drained of color, turning as white as her dress. The bouquet in her hands shook violently. For a moment, she looked like a child caught in a lie, terrified and small. The silence in the garden grew heavy. The music had stopped. The birds seemed to stop singing. All eyes turned from the bride to the old woman in the blue dress standing at the edge of the gathering. I felt the entire room waiting for what she would say. My heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird as she took a step toward me, leaving Trent at the altar. She rushed down the aisle to me, not with open arms, but with a frantic, hurried energy. She stopped 2 feet away, her voice a low hiss. "Mom, what are you doing here?" she whispered, her teeth clenched. "You need to leave, now. You're ruining everything." Her voice shook, cracking with panic. "I'm ruining it?" I asked, my voice calm, though my hands shook on my cane. "By being alive?" The guests closest to us stared, confused and murmuring. They were hearing us. "Please," she begged, tears of rage in her eyes. "Just go. We'll talk later. Just go." For the first time, she couldn't hide what she'd done. The veil was lifted. I realized she feared the truth more than she feared losing me. She cared more about the image of the wedding than the reality of her mother. Before I could answer, Caleb stepped out from the groomsmen line. He walked briskly down the aisle to where we stood. He didn't look at Nora, he looked at me. He placed a strong hand on my shoulder, steadying me. He turned to the crowd, his voice loud and clear. "Everyone," Caleb said, his voice shaking slightly but gaining strength, "I'd like you to welcome our mother, Loretta. She is here, she is alive, and she is beautiful." A ripple went through the crowd, shock, then realization. Vern, my cousin, stood up in the third row. He started clapping. Slowly at first, then harder. Mrs. Higgins stood up too. A few others joined in. But many just glared at Nora. The disgust on their faces was palpable. The lie had collapsed. The truth finally had air, filling the garden with a fresh, sharp clarity. Nora broke down. She didn't scream, she just crumpled. She covered her face with her hands and began to sob, not the pretty crying of a bride, but the ugly, heaving crying of someone whose mask has been ripped off. I didn't argue or shout. I didn't say "I told you so." I simply reached out and touched her arm. "I came because I love you, Nora," I said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "I came because I am your mother. Whether you want me or not, you cannot erase me." The room went quiet as she wept. Trent stood awkwardly at the altar, looking at his shoes. He knew he was complicit. He knew they were both exposed. I felt my strength return in waves. I wasn't the frail dead woman on the invitation. I was the matriarch. I was the survivor. I didn't stay for the reception. I didn't need the cake or the dancing. I had done what I came to do. After the ceremony, I walked away with dignity, leaning on my cane but holding my head high. Caleb walked me to the car, hugging me tight before I left. "I'm proud of you, Mom," he whispered. I drove home alone, but I didn't feel lonely. I felt light. I told myself that love doesn't mean allowing others to erase you. Love means respecting yourself enough to exist, even when it's inconvenient for others. Life lesson. If someone tries to make you disappear, stand up gently but firmly. Your existence matters. Do not let anyone bury you before your time. I invite you all to share your own stories of being pushed aside by those they loved in the comments below. Let's support each other. And remember, you are never too old to reclaim your voice.